First, there was nothing but darkness. And then there was this. Then there was this, and this, and this. Now you're probably asking yourself, hey, what's an ice cube, some water, and this weird cloud doing here? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Today we're going to be talking about the phases of matter. Now you're also going to be asking yourself, hey, what is matter? Well, to put it simply, matter is anything that has a physical shape, form, or mass. The most common forms of matter come in three forms. They are solid, liquid, and gas. Those three forms of matter are also called the phases of matter. Each phase has their own definition attached to it. A solid being any object that is formed of tightly compacted particles. Liquid, which is anything that is also formed of tightly compacted particles, but unlike a solid, it has no definite shape. And gases, which are objects composed of freely floating particles. They have no definite shape whatsoever. Now, what does that have to do with any of the stuff that I showed you earlier? Well, water, ice, and steam are actually all the same thing. They are all water, but in different forms, with water being the liquid form of, well, water, ice being the solid form of water, and steam being the gaseous form of water. But are they really the same thing? To which the answer is yes. But how can a liquid, a solid, and a gas all be the same thing? It all has something to do with the temperature. Let's take regular liquid water for instance. If you were to heat up water for a certain amount of time, you would notice that it starts to boil and turn into steam. The opposite can also be said for steam. If you were to cool down steam for a while, you would notice that it would turn back into regular liquid water. But what if we kept cooling down the water? Well, if we kept cooling down the water, it would eventually freeze and turn into ice. And then once again, if we were to heat up the ice, it would melt and turn back into water. Now, if you listened carefully, you noticed I used some rather specific words for the process of what would happen to each phase as it underwent this temperature change. For instance, I said that when you heat up water, it boils and turns into steam. And then, I said, if you heat up ice, it will melt and turn into water. And then I said, if you would cool down water, it would freeze and turn into ice. And then lastly, if you took steam and cooled it down, it would condense into water. Alright, so just to recap, ice to water is melting, water to steam is boiling, steam to water is condensing, and water to ice is freezing. Now, the usual order would be to go from solid to liquid to gas, and the other way around, in that exact order. But unfortunately, the world is a weird place, and there have been instances of objects going from solid straight to gas and from gas to solid. This process of gas going to solid is called deposition. The most common example of deposition is when water droplets in the air freeze during the winter time, and in the morning when you wake up you can see them as this. This is frost, the most common example of deposition that we know of. As for sublimation, well, in order to look at that we need to use something else. This is dry ice. It's different from regular ice in some different ways. For instance, dry ice is solid carbon dioxide, which is a gas, rather than being solid water, which is what ice is made out of. Secondly, dry ice also is colder than regular ice, which means it's better for keeping stuff cold. Though I wouldn't recommend putting it in your drink or in your fridge. The sublimation of dry ice can be something to behold, so instead of explaining it, I'd rather show it to you. Now, there exists a fourth state of matter, although not as common or easy to replicate as the others. It is called plasma. Plasma is basically a substance that has charged particles going around through it. One form of plasma is commonly known as fire. Fire is considered a plasma because it does not fit the definitions of the other three phases that we talked about earlier. It has no definite shape like a solid. It does not take up the shape of its container like a liquid, and it is not freely floating like a gas. There are countless other examples of the four states of matter that I have given to you, but who knows? There could be more. For all I know, there could be a fifth state out there. If you want to go and find it, go ahead. But, should something like that exist, do remember who inspired you to go on your journey. Me!